Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer, your number one source for everything Austin FC. On today's show, we're going to talk about our picks in the. On today's show, we're going to talk about our picks in the expansion draft, plus some additional signings that Austin FC has made. We're also going to talk about what Moon Tower Soccer is. So, my name is Landon Cottom, and I'm joined as always by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and I feel almost the same, but slightly different now that we're doing Moon Tower Soccer. So let's talk about that, how that came to be, Landon.
Yeah, so we were approached a few weeks ago by the folks over at The Striker about joining them as their Austin FC podcast. So we decided to take them up on that. We announced that on Monday this week, and so we're very excited to be joining The Striker. If you haven't heard about what The Striker is, it's going to be a Texas soccer website, and they've picked up some of the best soccer writers in the state, and they're going to be covering soccer at all levels throughout the state of Texas. Our friend Chris Bills is writing for them. John Arnold, who you may have seen writing about CONCACAF and about Dallas soccer, and then Victor Araiza is writing, going to be their Houston writer. But they've got youth soccer writers, they've got lower level soccer writers, they've got women's soccer writers. And so it's going to be a really, really awesome website and a really great resource for Texas soccer news. But so we're very honored for them to ask us to be part of what they're doing as their Austin FC podcast. Because of that, we had to leave behind the Capital City Soccer Show and CapitalCitySoccer.com. That being said, CapitalCitySoccer.com is alive and well, and Troy and Zach over there are still ramping up for a big year. They're going to be doing really big things as well. We're still going to be big promoters and supporters of those guys. We really enjoyed working with them, but we're going forward. This show is going to be called Moon Tower Soccer, and we'll be doing it with The Striker.
Yeah, one of these days we'll share with y'all some of the really bad ideas that we had for other names. I think mostly names that I had, and at some point I will be the host of the Taco Brisket Show, but I don't know that it'll be about soccer. And I did see that Emily from Cat City Soccer was at the stadium today and took a bunch of video and stuff. So it was cool to see them out and covering the news.
Yeah. So they really are going to be doing some cool stuff. So we're happy to have worked with them for the short time that we did. But do you want to talk about some soccer, Jeremiah?
Sure. Let's talk about how Philip Mayaka was the most sure thing number one overall pick, according to Matt Doyle on the show right before that was made. Did that happen, Landon?
Not just Matt Doyle. I'm not going to call out just Matt Doyle because it was everybody. It was Ives Galarcep, who I think he's kind of a bellwether on stuff like this. But I listened to his podcast reviewing the Super Draft, and he said that he spoke to dozens and dozens of people, and almost all of them had Mayaka listed as the top prospect. But yeah, it's not what happened, is it? Austin FC ended up picking Daniel Pereira from Virginia Tech.
Yeah, and what do we know about Pereira?
What was your initial reaction to them picking Pereira?
I was shocked. I think I'd studied Mayaka a lot, and I'd watched some of Calvin Harris, but like Pereira was not one that I had seen much video or read a whole lot about or anything. So I was not really prepared for that at all. How about you?
No, same for me. Yeah, I didn't really even bother watching footage of him. I watched some of Harris just to kind of see what kind of player, because most of the boards had it Mayaka, Harris, Pereira, and so I was like, there's no way we're going to pick Pereira, because if we pick someone else, it's going to be Harris, right? So I watched video of those two, and so when we picked Pereira, like I saw a lot of people who were upset, like on Twitter and in Slack and stuff like that. They were mad that we didn't take Mayaka, and I was just like, I don't know, because I didn't watch any video of this other guy. So after watching video of him, actually before I even got a chance to do that, seeing him in the press conference, he really impressed me just as a person. So he was born in Venezuela. He came to the U.S. at the age of 15 as an asylum seeker. Didn't know anything about the U.S., didn't know anything about U.S. soccer. He played for his high school team. I think the coaches saw him and said, like, oh, this guy's very good. We need to put him on a path to be doing something special. And so ended up at Virginia Tech and was a very special player there from his freshman year, got even better his sophomore year. but didn't get to play as many games. I think he played 20 some odd games for them total, and it was only like 7 this season. So didn't get to play a lot of games, but was very impressive. In the interview with him, just seems like a very humble and just like a nice kid. And he talked about how like moving here was just a very hard thing for him, and he just kind of threw himself into his soccer, and that's just all he's done. I think it's really impressive, just a kid like that who knows that like everything doesn't necessarily, like nothing's been given to him. Like he understands the fact that it's not necessarily going to work out for the best for him. And so seems like he's just really taking that to heart. He's like, I'm going to throw all of my life into this soccer dream, and I'm going to make that work one way or another.
Yeah, I know.
So,
I really got that out of what we heard afterwards, just how hungry and how driven he was and how important that was to them and how much he wanted to be in. We talked a lot about players. We want players that want to be in Austin, and it feels like he has that same kind of drive and ambition that we look for in our senior players. That was exciting to hear.
And he was also absolutely surprised that he got picked first, because in the press conference afterwards, someone asked him, like, did you know, like, did they call you and tell you or anything? And he's like, no, I was watching the show like you guys were. And so he didn't know he's going to get picked first, and I seemed very excited. But yeah, do you want to talk about what kind of player he is?
Yeah, why don't you talk about that a little bit, what he did at Virginia Tech? I guess one other thing I didn't know about, and you mentioned this earlier, is like the 26 games he played in 2 years. And I think when everybody got excited about seeing all the mock drafts and then everybody was upset about how it didn't turn out that way, like, I don't know that we all appreciated how little game time that those players had gotten and how a lot of this is based upon your scouting and perception and what the front office thinks and like all these things beyond just, oh, this person has this like long career of success in college soccer, because there's not a lot of film on him, and there wasn't a lot because of the pandemic last year either.
Yeah. So most of this information I'm about to share is from later in his freshman year, and then mostly from his sophomore year, this 2020 season that he partially played in. But he primarily played as an 8 in kind of a double pivot, like either in a 4-4-2 or some type of two-man central midfield, or sometimes they would play in like a 4-1-4-1, and he was paired with a 6, so like a more defensive partner in any of these cases. And so in the 4-4-2, he would be the more attacking of those two midfield guys, but still staying deeper than some of these other attacking players. And then in the 4-1-4-1, he would be two of those like dual 8s sitting in front of the 6. And so comparing him to Mayaka, the games that I watched and the clips that I watched, Mayaka was playing as a 6, and just like a high tempo, cover a lot of ground 6. And so I think that's probably one of the reasons why they chose him, is that I think Mayaka is I think he's a safe bet. Like, you could take him at his level now and plug him into MLS. He'll get minutes, and you can play him right now. I think Pereira probably has a higher ceiling, but a lower floor, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know that Pereira is ready to step into the game right now and start 27 games or however many games there are in a season. But I think the potential that he has, and I think that he could be better than Mayaka, but it's a crapshoot, right? As far as comparing their games, I think he's more skillful, more technical on the ball than Mayaka was. And he'll create more chances. And he's one of those guys, when you watch him with the ball at his feet, like Mayaka is good at like driving that ball forward, but as far as chance creation, he wasn't like, he had some assists and some goals, but he just didn't look like a guy that's just going to like always be creating those chances. And Pereira's got kind of that smooth touch on the ball, and just like, I don't know, when you see him like receive the ball and kind of like roll his foot over it, you can tell he just like has that natural touch on it. And so I think he's going to be a more creative player than what Mayaka would have been for us. But yeah, I don't know, as far as what he's going to be, like we said, we haven't seen very much from him. So one thing that I thought was interesting is Josh Wolf told Ives Galarcep on the SBI podcast that They had gotten Dave Tinney, Dave Tinney is our director of high performance for Austin FC. And he's also an alumni of Virginia Tech. And so they had him contact the high performance folks at Virginia Tech, and they were all extremely high on Daniel Pereira and kind of his potential physically and how much he's kind of progressed from his freshman to sophomore year. And so I thought that was an interesting thing that they were looking at as well. But after watching this video and learning more about him, I'm pretty excited about him. I'm not disappointed in the least that they chose him over Mayaka.
Do you think that Ring being around was a factor at all, or do you think it was really just the potential of Pereira and Mayaka?
Yeah, I think it definitely could have played into the decision because, like I said, Mayaka played a lot of 6 this year, and so you could shoehorn him into this 8 position in a system where they've said they want to possess the ball and create chances. If maybe he's not the best player to do that, and like I said, you could plug him in and know he could play right now, but as far as like his longer term potential, I don't think he's exactly the type of player that Josh Wolf is going to be looking for. And I think Pereira has the potential to be that guy and like playing in a slightly more advanced position than Ring, where Ring, like they've said, Ring is our 6. Like that's where we want him to play. And so why pick another 6 to play beside him?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you want to talk about the other guys? I mean, we got 4 more players?
Yeah, we can go through quickly. I'm not going to pretend to know enough about any of these guys. If I think you can go listen to Ivis Galarseb's podcast there's lots of columns and podcasts that you can go listen to people or read people who know way more about this stuff than us. But the second pick, which is for Austin FC at number 11, was Freddie Kleeman, a center back from Washington. And that one apparently surprised a lot of people. Not many people had him listed very highly in their draft. And Ivis Galarseb said that they probably could have waited until their next pick and got him with that one. But apparently they really liked him. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, he's big. He's big. That's the one thing I know about him, right? He's 6'4". He played 28 matches. So again, not a lot of history to fall back on.
Yeah. Regarding the others, I don't know a lot about them. One thing that I thought was interesting in the press conference after the super draft, I asked Wolf if he planned on loaning any of these guys out to USL or if that was like a possibility. And he said that he wants all of them to come together at camp. So like if he can make that happen, he wants to bring them all into camp and just see what they look like and get them kind of in that team environment. But then after that there's definitely a possibility that some of them end up playing in USL this season or something like that. And then actually on Monday, Chris Bills interviewed Claudio Reyna, and we'll talk more about this interview later in the show, but because there's a lot of good information in it. But he told him that there's one of the players that they're looking at may continue playing college this season, and I'm not sure. Maybe you know this, Jeremiah, but I don't know if that means we would give up his MLS rights or if we would. Like if he could go back and play college for a year and then whenever he's ready to come to MLS, if we would still get him or if we would just be giving up those rights. I don't know how that works.
I don't know how that works. And I would have, before the Joe Corona thing, I would have just guessed that if we're going to draft him, eventually we would end up with our rights, we would hang on to him. But as we've seen, MLS rules are fickle and strange. So we'll have to see what comes out of it. But yeah, he was pretty clear about it. He didn't say who it was. I liked how he's really good at not naming names. No matter how much
really
he gets pushed.
At not giving information when he doesn't want to.
for sure. But yes, it may be somebody. I thought that was interesting that they're going to bring them all together and give them all a shot. So Kleeman was the 11th pick, which we acquired by trading away Kamal Miller. So I want to ask you, would you rather have Kamal Miller or Freddie Kleeman?
Yeah, I would rather have Kamal Miller, but I think this draft pick was kind of like a little bonus thing because you remember we also got $250,000 in GAM for that
That's
pick.
True. That's true.
So that was the main value add in that. And I think the 11th pick was like, and this also to maybe tip it over the edge. So I'm still very happy with that trade. I think getting that extra allocation money was totally worth it. And then the 11th pick was a cherry on top. So I think I'm still really good with that trade.
All right, that works then. I'm going to allow a pass on that. And we did, so Travis Clark, our recent interviewee, did a draft grades article for MLSsoccer.com and gave Austin a nice solid B, which I think I looked at kind of where they'd all broken down, or maybe like 10th or 12th, middle of the pack, basically. He seems to be a pretty easy grader. He didn't give a lot of failing grades, but, we did pretty good, not great.
I thought it was interesting in his grade, he did not mention our second pick. He
Oh,
didn't
that's
say
true.
anything about Freddie Kleeman.
Yeah. Even the goalkeeper, who was the last pick, they at least mentioned a little bit to keep an eye out for him.
Yeah.
And I don't watch a lot of college soccer, but I was shocked about how many ACC players there were. They must be really, really good.
Well, I think they're very good, but also the ACC was the only conference that played any amount of a real season this year. And so that's just who the coaches got to see. And so there's probably good play. I mean, not probably. There are good players in other leagues, but they didn't play this year, so nobody got to see them. So I think there's probably I haven't done the math on this, but I would imagine the ACC is overrepresented in the draft this year.
Yeah, that makes sense too. We won't talk about them a whole lot, but the Houston Dynamo put together a great offseason. I know it looked like they also had a really good draft too. And Ethan Bartlow was actually somebody I did look at it a little bit, and it was interesting to see him. They traded up, right, to get him?
Yeah, they traded into a spot to get Bartlow, and then have made some other big moves as well. So it looks like the Dynamo might actually make an effort to put together a competitive team this year.
Yeah, we might not want to taunt him so much on Twitter about finishing last.
Let's talk about another signing. So during the press conferences after the Super Draft, Claudio Reyna and I think it was Josh Wolf. Josh Wolf kind of teased about us signing a player in the next couple of days. And so sure enough, the next day we got green smoke from Anthony Precourt. And then the next day we were thinking maybe a player in the morning. And then we waited and waited and waited. And then finally there it was. Kekuta Mane signed as a free agent by Austin FC. So what was your reaction to Kekuta Mane, Jeremiah?
So I didn't know a lot about him. I know he has local ties, and that was one thing that Precourt talked about in the smoke tweet, right, was that it was somebody who knew their way around Austin, which
right.
I think we at that point felt like it narrowed it down to either Kyrie Shelton or Mane, and Mane's had a contract.
A lot of people are also throwing around Miguel Layún because of the trip that he made to
That's
Austin.
Fair. One thing I loved about the press conference is when Josh is like, yeah, we're going to have a player tomorrow. And then Tom Webb's like, tomorrow? Are you sure tomorrow? Like, that seems kind of aggressive. Maybe not tomorrow, but they ended up, I think they ended up being 2 days later. So they didn't quite pull it off. But, I mean, everything I've read, I mean, he's fast. He's got a lot of talent. He's succeeded in the past. He's had a little bit of downtime recently, but why don't you cover his backstory a little bit, because it's super interesting.
I went and watched some videos, just like got on YouTube and typed in Kekuta Mane just to see what I could find, just to see what kind of person he is. So he was born in Gambia in 1994. His mother died when he was 10 years old. He ended up coming to the U.S. on some type of soccer exchange program when he was 15 and ended up in Austin. I didn't really put together the dots of how he ended up in Austin, or like why he came here as opposed to somewhere else, but ended up in Austin, was staying with a host family. His time ended in this program, and he was going to have to go back to Gambia, and he didn't really want to go. And the family, he had gotten really close to this family that he was living with, and so they ended up adopting him, and that's just like his family now. Like that's he calls them mom and dad, and like calls them all the time and FaceTimes them. It's like that's his family now. And so he went on trial a few teams in MLS, ended up signing a GA contract in 2013 and got drafted 4th overall by the Whitecaps. Went and played 4 seasons in Vancouver, and was really exciting. So as an 18-year-old, I skipped another part. He actually played for Lone Star when he was a teenager. And then at the age of 17, started playing for Austin Aztecs, which was I don't know if they were USL at the time. Do you remember what league they were playing in at the time?
I think they were US. I think they were USL.
In a couple of different leagues. Ended up playing for the Aztecs at 17. It was one of their best players at 17, which is pretty impressive. And so ends up at the Whitecaps when he's 18. In 4 seasons, had 101 appearances and 22 goals. And I think early on in the career, he was like, there were rumors that like Premier League clubs were looking at him, and it ended up I don't know. He must have had a dip in form at the end, but he ended up getting traded to the Crew in 2017 and played that season, then became a free agent. Bounced around that whole next year, ended up spent like 6 months in Mexico and 8 months in Switzerland. Ended up coming back and played for Cincinnati in 2019, 2020. Then played, I think, 6 games for New England in 2020, and then was a free agent, and that's how ended up available. But as far as him as a player, he's very fast, likes to dribble at people. And it's thinking about like where he's going to fit in this team. We don't really have another player that does what he does. Like just this super speedy, like dribbler. Like I don't think we have many other guys on the team who fit that profile. As far as like if he's going to play or if he's going to start, the other day we were talking to a friend of the show, Chris Wellhausen, and talking about Diego Fagundes. And I think a similar profile, like guys who know the league, played a lot in the league, but are probably like only nailed on starters for like a lower half MLS team. And so thinking about like whether or not these guys are going to be starters, I think you keep hearing Josh Wolf talk about how we just want to get them all together and see what they look like and see what we think they're going to look like and things like that. I think he's telling them like, come into camp and prove to me that you're going to be a starter. Like it's there. We have 2 DP spots open. So like prove to us that we shouldn't sign a DP in your position. And I think that's going to be the case for Diego Fagundes. And I think that could be the case for Mane. Like I think Mane a little bit less, given that he plays his strongest position is also Cecilio's strongest position. So I don't know that Mane is going to end up being a starter, but for as the dynamic kind of player that he is, he's definitely a good weapon to have off the bench.
Yeah, and one of the things I like about him, and we talked about this with Chris, and this is where Chris was wrong on Joe Corona, is that I think we've got a lot of people that, I mean, they're risks, they're kind of gambles, right? But they've got high ceiling and they've got low floor. But if half those pay off, we'll be in really good shape because we're not giving it. I'm guessing we're not. I mean, he's a free agent. We didn't pay a ton for him, right? So if you take enough of these shots and enough of them pay off, you're in a really good shape as opposed to, I don't know, just getting somebody who is average, but will be average a lot. So I'm excited about that potential in the context of the flexibility that he has in the whole roster.
Yeah, he's a player who's not had like a really steady or good club situation in several years. And so that's kind of a chicken and egg thing, right? Like, does he have bad club situations because he's not good enough to cement a spot there? Or is he not been in good form because he's been in bad club situations? So he does seem to be very motivated. He calls Austin, it's like as much of a home as anywhere. So hopefully that motivates him. He seems excited to be here. So we'll just have to see what he can do.
And he's another Columbus guy, right? So he would have been with Wolf in Columbus in 2017 too?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he's a known commodity to a lot of that front office, which I think probably had a little bit to do with it too.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about what the rest of the roster looks like. So we mentioned Chris Bills interviewing Claudio Reyna today at the stadium sponsor announcement. There was a lot of information that came out of this interview.
Especially a 13-minute interview or 14-minute interview or whatever it was. It wasn't a lot, but yeah, Chris asked the big question that everybody's been wanting to know. And, at first Claudio didn't want to answer. I think one of the things that I've noticed now is when Claudio starts with, yeah, that means he's not going to give you a straight answer to the question because he did that.
Chris Bills was an absolute hero though, and didn't let him get away with not answering it. So the question was, how many senior roster spots does Austin FC have left on the roster? And Claudio tried to not answer it. And I think he seemed to be doing it out of like kind of a sense of privacy for the players. Mm-hmm. And Chris was like, no, you don't have to tell me the names, just like how many spots are there? And he reluctantly said that we have 4 senior roster spots left, which shocked me. I don't know about you, Jeremiah. What did you think about that?
Well, I thought we had 3. So now I'm super curious.
I thought we had 2.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Mane would have been 18, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, I thought we had 2 left. And so he's saying we have 4 senior spots left. And then he also added in, like, And we have got the flexibility to create more if we need to. It was like, whoa. It's like, okay, I'm very excited about this roster now because I think we talked about it on the last show, but if we've got 2 DP spots left and only 2 senior roster spots left, then those are the 2 signings, right? And like, I think they'd have to be like really, really good DPs for them to make me think that this team is going to definitely like compete at a very high level next year or this season. But if we've got 2 DPs plus 2 other senior guys, like maybe even TAM players, because we only have 1 or 2 of those so far, even
right.
Like that, this could end up being a really strong roster depending on what those 4 spots look like. So that got me pretty excited. There's some other news that he said. Do you want to tell us about what that was?
Yeah, I think we can talk about what we expect for future signings, and this is going to be a little bit of a combination of the Josh Wolf press conference after the Super Draft and what Claudio said. 'Cause they covered a couple of the same spots, but
they're like kind of like filling in holes in each other's stories, right?
Yeah, Claudio's was more exciting. Josh's was like less. I don't know if it was less specific, but Claudio got me more fired up. I think maybe knowing, like you said, knowing that we had more spots available than I thought, but definitely 2 internationals. Definitely got the opinion that 1 is coming soon. I mean, it seemed like there are active negotiations going on for one of them. But it also seemed like the other one is probably not going to come until the summer, which is something that I think Claudio kind of raised the possibility of it at the expansion draft. And then Josh followed on, and then Claudio really drove that home today, I thought.
Yeah, and then I think Precourt in an interview with Chris Bills today at the stadium announcement also said, like, flat out said, like, we may wait until the summer to fill that 3rd one.
Oh, so, I thought he was just talking business guy stuff. I did not watch the Precourt interview. So
yeah,
if there's anything
he was talking about players, but he said in like more certain, like with more confidence than the other 2 did, that we are talking to a player right now, and if it goes through, we're gonna have a DP soon, like second DP soon. And then about the 3rd one said, we may wait until the summer to sign that 3rd DP. So I think that goes back to kind of what I was talking about. Wolf telling these guys to earn their spot is go into the season with 2 DPs, see who is going to step up and be a real game changer for Austin FC. And if it's in one of the positions they were looking at a DP, then maybe they'll sign him somewhere else. But Claudio also gave us some pretty clear hints as to where they're looking at DPs, right? Where in the field. So he ended up saying an attacking type player, and then another one that will quote unquote help and attack one way or the other. So I don't really know how to read that. What do you think help and attack one way or the other means?
Yeah, the only thing that makes sense to me on that ties back into something we've done before. I think it was last week. Did we talk about that? Maybe adding a player in the back line. If you had like a wide, and it'd have to be left back because Lima's the right back for sure. Maybe if you had like an attacking left back that would add to the offense and take Ben Sweat's spot. That's the only other thing that makes sense for me. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the one that Claudio's talking about, yeah, it could be. He definitely said an attacking player. So I think the one that they're in talks with now is like a 9. He wouldn't say if it was a 9 or a 10. Bills tried to get him to tell that, but he said an attacking player. So I think that's the one they're in talks with now. And then the other one, I don't know, maybe an 8 to start over Pereira in that 8 position, or maybe a left back. But they did say they're looking at defenders as well. So who knows? But it's exciting to know that we may have another DP coming pretty soon.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. We're getting just blown up with the news, right? Between the draft last week and the stadium announcement today, and got a jersey coming out this week. It's been a whole bunch of news. Is there anybody that you can think that we either could or should loan out to free up space?
I mean, one that comes to mind is Brady Scott, the 21-year-old goalkeeper. He's at an age and kind of at a level where they may want him to just get games instead of like being in camp or being on the bench and hanging out around the team. Maybe they think games is the best way to improve him at this point. So maybe they loan him out, and Noah Lawrence, that the super draft pick, ends up being our number 3 goalkeeper. Because like, how much is a 3rd string goalkeeper going to play, really? Like, something went wrong if the 3rd string goalkeeper is playing, right? So maybe they would loan him out and that would open up a spot. But as far as the others, like those original 17 guys, I can't think of many of them. Like, it would surprise me if any of those other ones got sent out somewhere.
Well, just because you missed the 6-hour Rodney Reyes isn't on the roster, what does it mean to everything journey that we all went on? I think on Reddit and maybe on Twitter and in Los Verdes Slack, which was probably like some poor web person that just hit the wrong button on code or something. But yeah, for a little bit, I think while Reyes...
You started a bunch of theories that we'd already sold Redis to someone else or something.
Yeah, like while Redis is like posting pictures on Instagram from the airport, you know, we had figured out that he was going to be the guy gone. That was where we were going to find extra space.
That's another exciting thing to talk about is we've got quite a few players here in town now. So I think all three of the Guarani boys are here now. And then who else have we seen be in town? I think Ben Sweat's here.
Stuver.
Hector Jimenez here. Brad Stuver's here. Ring is here.
Yep. Yeah, and I was going to say Diego Fagundes has played foot golf with a group of fans from Los Verdes already.
Yeah.
So he's super into that. So we've got a good sized contingency already in town. Did you see the Dominguez running like 100 miles an hour on the treadmill at the Fairmont?
Yeah. Yeah, so if anybody wants to just go book a room at the Fairmont, you get to hang out with half the Austin FC roster. All right, I think that's a good spot for a break. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll come back with some stadium news. And also we're going to talk about the jersey that's releasing in a couple of days. So we'll be right back. We may have a new name, but Moon Tower Soccer is still brought to you by our friends over at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And according to emails, it's also a law firm that loves our new name, or they're just really kind, because it would be kind of mean of them to like email us and tell us the name sucks.
Yeah, they were very nice about that. So I was happy that they liked it. You can go to fvf.law to find out more about what makes FVF different and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. That's fvf.law. So I've got a load and come back to me. I wanna listen close. So before the break, we were talking about a lot of different Austin FC players being in town. So let's talk about when they're actually going to get to play. So we've got some news about the season opening and then also a little bit of news about the collective bargaining agreement. So MLS announced today that the season is going to be starting on April 3rd. And they've released an actual date and said this is when it is, that's a thing we haven't had since last March, probably.
No, nobody's expecting that.
Games are going to happen.
Yeah, nobody's expecting that at all. So I guess book your calendars for MLS is back the first weekend of April, which is something we had to discuss. It's interesting that they picked that name, right? Because it's not a tournament in a bubble, but it's confusing to have that.
I think that is very confusing to call it opening weekend MLS is back whenever MLS is back is like a very clear thing that happened last year and a very unique thing that happened last year to use the same name for it, but whatever. So April 3rd and 4th is going to be that opening weekend. They said that late August is going to be MLS Heineken rivalry week. They are planning on having MLS All-Star game in late summer. Then they're saying decision day is going to be November 7th. Then the playoffs will begin November 19th, and MLS Cup is going to be December 11th. So we've got dates now. I think the only thing missing now is a schedule of like when Austin will actually start playing. But one thing that we don't know is when Austin's going to play their first home match. So what did we learn from Andy Loughnane today, Jeremiah?
Well, Andy today. And this reinforces something he said, I think, to Bills before. He talked about the stadium would start hosting events in June, which is consistent with some other things we heard. Because before he talked about how, sure, the building can be ready, but you got to hire staff and train staff and do all this. You can't just build a building and then open it the next day, or you can, but you'll have a terrible experience for fans. So
yeah,
that was what he said. So we can expect 2 months on the road, from what I'm hearing out of that.
Yeah. Do you? I hadn't thought about that aspect of it, about like, this is a stadium that's never existed and therefore has never been staffed. And so it's going to take a while for us to get that up and going. Do you think there's any part of this plan where they're trying to delay that home opener as much as possible to get as many fans into the stadium as possible?
I mean, I think so. Us more than anybody, it's important to open with as many fans in the stands you can have. Because even last year during the pandemic, Nashville got to play before it all hit. Right, they got to play home games. So it'd be really weird to be a brand new expansion franchise that had sold all these tickets and start in a quarter full or empty building. So I can imagine they're going to slow play that as long as possible.
Yeah, I think so. Going back to the CBA, so there was an open letter from Don Garber to the MLS fans last week, and it was I don't know how to describe it. How would you describe this letter?
Well, I've described it as cynical. That's what I got out of it.
Yeah,
it was
that's a good word.
We've tried very hard. We've made a fair offer. If the season doesn't start on time, it's going to be the players' fault and not ours. And we look forward to, entertaining fans and all that other stuff that they put in there. But it was weird to see that negotiation in public, I think, which is the thing that's really a departure from years past.
Yeah. So I think whenever there was, I think a thing the week before that came out from MLS, and then this thing from Garber coming out that started to maybe make it look like the CBA negotiations weren't going super well. And not to say that they are going well, but it started to look like for a day or two there that it was going very poorly. But we got news that the MLS Players Association did send back a counteroffer to the league. So that's progress. We don't know any details about what that counteroffer looked like. I'm sure we'll find out what it was at some point, but that's one step closer to an agreement being met. Hopefully they can come to an agreement that works for everyone, that the players feel is fair, that the league feels that they can work with. But yeah, hopefully this is just one more step to everyone, or to the league starting up again, because it would be terrible for our first season to get delayed even more after all of the delays that we've had over the last 3 years or whatever it is. So I'm just ready to see a team play.
But you would still right now go for take as long as it takes to be in a full stadium, right? If forced to choose?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would rather not have a home game until June than have or a quarter full stadium or a half full stadium in April or May.
Yeah, and with this start, it seems like a pretty compact schedule. When was MLS Cup this year? It was December, wasn't it? So are they like starting a month later? Well, I mean, I guess this year's kind of weird.
It was scheduled for around December 11th last year, like the original date was. So it's going to be slightly compacted, like 3 or 4 weeks shorter. So not crazy, not anything they can't make up. I imagine they'll still have to play through some international breaks and things like that. But
it's MLS. It's MLS, and they play through international breaks anyhow, so it won't be that off character.
It's never stopped them before. They're losing more and more players to those international breaks every year that they do this, so I think it's something they'll have to deal with eventually, but this year I think it just comes with the territory of being alive in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about maybe 3 different times on this show about the stadium press conference without mentioning the name of the stadium.
Yes, so Austin FC announced today that the stadium sponsor is Q2 and that the name of the stadium will now be Q2 Stadium. So, Jeremiah, what actually give us some of the details of this agreement first before we get into the reaction.
Sure. So Q2 is a Austin-based financial services company. One thing that I thought was a little bit different out of this one from other ones, because like lots of teams have financial services company as sponsors, but this one's typically more like business to business. So they provide software for credit unions and things like that, and less just like straightforward a bank. But yeah, Q2, they check the box. They're an Austin-based company. They've been around for a while. They're looking to build. So they hit on the things that Andy's talked about. They also announced their official community partnership in that they are going to do a program in 2021 to jumpstart or accelerate business plans. They talked about helping coding among minority and disadvantaged communities. And for those of you that are to go back to a show we did a while back, if your pants are very fancy, you will be in the Q2 Field Club, which is the club experience adjacent to the player benches and locker rooms there in Q2 Stadium. So, I mean, it's good. We should talk about the Twitter and Reddit reaction a bit, I think. What did you think about that?
Yeah, so to give full context, Jeremiah was told by a contact probably a week or two ago that Q2 was likely going to be the stadium sponsor. And so Jeremiah told me, and my reaction was like, all right, that's fine. It's like,
okay,
cool. All right. And I think it's like part of the territory. I just expected it to be some big, like super huge. And you looked into it a while back, right? Like it's all financial institutions or car companies or
health
hospitals.
Systems.
Yeah, there you go. So I was expecting it to be one of those things because that's what all of them are, right? I think a lot of people in Austin just like let themselves believe that it was going to be Torchy's Stadium or something like that. And it was never going to be that thing, right? So I just like, yeah, I was like, it's fine. I think the logo is cool. It's short. It's non-intrusive. It's not Papa John's or the Phoenix Online University Stadium or whatever. Like, it's a simple name. It's invisible almost. Like, and I think I say that in a good way. Like, I want it to be something that's not just like terrible sounding, and I don't think it is, but I was very surprised, and maybe I shouldn't have been, but I was surprised at how negative the reaction was by a lot of fans.
Yeah, it was they had a lot of renderings, and the stadium, of course, already has its own Twitter account, and so I would encourage people to go to Q2 Stadium on Twitter, and they did this like fly-through video that showed the logo on the roof and in the back. I mean, it was like you knew it was Q2, but it wasn't obtrusive. It was like
those videos are
Q2 above
cool.
The scoreboard, but yeah, they were cool.
But yeah, I would be interested to hear, like, for the people who are very disappointed, like what did you want it to be, or what did you expect it to be? Because there's not many companies who can afford to do a thing like this, right? Like Torchy's isn't going to spend $4 or $5 million a year on advertising like this. Like, they're just not going to. And like other companies with cool names, and like, can you think of any stadiums that have a cool name?
No,
that haven't been open for 150 years.
Right, none that have a corporate sponsor. I mean, what would be like a corporate sponsor that gets people excited? I can't think of one. Kendra Scott Stadium appeared to be one that somebody,
but even like I don't think Kendra Scott could or would want to do that. Like, it's a very select. It's like this very select echelon of companies who can afford to do a thing like this, and I think we got a pretty good one. Like, as far as just like aesthetics and like the way it sounds, I think we did fine. I'm not that upset about it.
Yeah, let's talk about the money, because it was a little bit hard to figure out, which I know none of these deals are particularly public, but one thing that was said at one point was that the sponsorship was going to be less than 1% of revenue for Q2, is what the annual price was. And so then a bunch of us went and looked at financial statements, and in 2019 they made $315 million, which would put it at about 3, which seems like a low number. But then I read up on these Wall Street websites I didn't even know existed, and it looks like in 2020 they're looking at 400 million plus, and they're projecting like 450 or something for 2021. So if you look at that, like 4.5 million seems in the ballpark for what other teams pay.
Yeah, that's before the pandemic hit. Like, I think they had received an offer for like 3 million a year,
3.5,
or something like that, and they turned it down. And so maybe that could have changed. Like, the pandemic could have changed everything. Maybe a lot of companies aren't willing to spend that kind of money anymore. Maybe that offer went down. But we know the market before was such that 3.5 wasn't good enough. So I would guess it would be still around 4 or so, maybe a little bit higher. I think the highest one in MLS is like 6 or something.
Yeah, well, Bank of California did a $7 million deal, and now Bank of California is going broke, and they had to like break the contract and back out of it. So it's not the best example. If LAFC can't make $7 million a year work, nobody can.
Yeah, so I think it boils down to this: like, this is where the money comes from, right? Is things like this. And so you can have your stadium called Torchy's Stadium or Planet K Stadium for no money a year. And then Cecilio Dominguez is our highest paid designated player. Or we can get Q2 and we can go out and sign 2 other guys. And like, that's just how it works. That's the business of this game. And I know it's like not romantic and it's not a fun thing to see or to talk about, but it's the business of it. And that's what's going to allow us to buy good players.
Yeah. So settle down, Twitter, which I feel like is a thing. I feel like it's a thing we've said before many times too. Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked about who's going to play. We talked about where we're going to play. Let's talk about what they're going to wear when not at Q2.
Yeah.
Stadium.
So the jersey launch, which I think we were calling it the wrong thing all of last episode. I think we were calling it the legendary jersey, but I think they're calling it the Legends jersey.
Okay. Legends jersey. Got it.
And maybe we're saying it wrong again, but I think it's the Legends jersey. But anyway, it's going to be like the away jersey or like the alternate jersey to the one that's already out. That's coming out on Wednesday of this week. They're already pre-selling it for like pre-selling spots with the Verde van. I did really like that the Verde van's going to like some pretty like far flung parts of the city. I thought that was cool to see. And just like places that they stayed pretty central last time. They went to maybe somewhere up north in Cedar Park or something like that last time, but they're going to go to like pretty far corners of the Austin area, which I thought was pretty cool. But you can pre-order those not knowing what it looks like. I imagine a lot of people are doing that, but any last guesses about what it's going to look like?
I think we've seen, because everybody overanalyzes everything, the fact that the background on all the tweets with the Verde van are white, and the fact that there's a new scarf that they've made available are white.
There's like
confirms
a whole
the theory.
section of merch that came available at the Verde van that's white. I think there's scarves and shirts and a couple of other things. But yeah, it's going to be white with green trim. We just have to see what combination of those 2 things is going to look like. But we'll find that on Wednesday.
That'll give us 2 Twitter uproars or Reddit uproars this week about things between that are probably fine and don't matter that much, and it's going to be good.
That's what we're going to tell you to calm down about next week. Before we finish up, let's do a quick Academy update. So I didn't know this was happening. I don't know that anybody knew this was happening, but the Academy teams played a quick little tournament last weekend.
Actually, just the U15s. It wasn't even the whole Academy.
15s.
Yeah,
Okay.
just 15s. Yep.
So yeah, 15s played a game. And did they do well? What was the score?
They won all 3. They played twice on Saturday. They beat the Dynamo. They beat the Toros on Saturday, and then they played on Monday and beat Rise Soccer Club 3-0. So it was total 7-1 over the 3 matches. So they still continue to do well.
Yeah, so we knew that they would be playing some games in the spring, but I don't know when that is. I've tried to find out when the Academy is going to be playing, but they have been pretty secretive about that kind of stuff. I think a lot of that has to do with COVID and like stuff being up in the air a lot and not really finalized, but hopefully we can get some more Academy dates up and going soon. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up, Jeremiah?
No, I think we've covered it all. This ended up being a surprisingly full show. You know, I think a few days ago we didn't know what we would have to talk about, and we didn't have an interview. But there's a lot going on, which is exciting, and it's a lot of fun stuff because we don't, you know, we were stretching for topics 6 months ago, and we don't have to worry about that now.
Yeah, I think we probably, I haven't looked back at it, but I can almost guarantee we spent 20 or 30 minutes like talking about the rumor of a stadium sponsor, and we just spent like 5 minutes on it just now.
Yeah.
All right. We would like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'd also ask you to visit the Striker Texas whenever it launches next week. That's going to be, do we have a firm date? Is it February 1st or is it just sometime early February?
I think it's February 1st, but we're going to get in trouble for not knowing this too. So we'll just say next week.
Early February next week. Watch out for the Striker Texas launches. And a way that you can stay up to date on all of that is by following all the Strikers social media accounts. So they're on Twitter, Instagram. Are they on Facebook? I don't ever get on Facebook.
I haven't seen Facebook, but I mean, and they're already publishing content, right? Because this interview was on YouTube and posted to Twitter.
Yeah,
And then Chris's interview with Adrian Healy last week was on Instagram, so you can get the content. You just can't access the website yet already.
Yeah, so once the website launches, there'll be all kinds of articles all over Texas soccer. This is going to be, I'm very excited about this. I think it's going to be a really cool thing, and I think it's a thing that not many places in the U.S. are going to have this kind of resource available to them, and it's a really special thing that's being built, and we're very excited to see it and very excited to be a part of it. What else, Jeremiah? What other updates do we have?
Oh, I just had a quick update. January 22nd was Hi, How Are You Day, which is the birthday for Daniel Johnston, the Austin-based artist who drew this Jeremiah the Innocent, the frog mural that's really well known around town. And then also, I think we've seen it like on some signs that supporters have made and stuff already. And so Los Verdes, Soccer Assist, and Hi, How Are You are working on like a merch collaboration to raise money for mental health awareness. And there will be more about that coming out next week.
Yeah. All right. So next week we will be joined by, and we just got this confirmed today and we're very excited about it, but Sam Stachel of the Allocation Disorder podcast and writer for The Athletic is going to be joining us on the show next week. And we're going to talk about Austin FC's roster build and the latest CBA negotiations. And these are the things that Sam is like one of the absolute experts in. So we're very excited to have him on the show and talk about it. Until then, my name is Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
No one is around.
Feels fair that the league feels that they can work with, but I think a bug flew in my mouth.
Oh, no.